Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me on another of my interviews. Now, a few days ago, I had a mysterious phone call, and somebody, very nice sounding gentleman, was interested in what I was doing, and he was telling me that there was a sort of an amalgamation of grassroots people gathering together to form a, what would you call it? Well, he called it some form of rising up of people in a peaceful way. Well, I know I've had a lot of comments and suggestions and worries that these might be nefarious things, and or should I be worried, and all of that. Well, it seems that well, it's not. It doesn't seem the gentleman in question and his partner in crime have contacted me now, and I've persuaded them to come on the show and talk about this whole situation. So I'm very pleased to bring to you Joe and Adrian from what we're at the moment excitingly call the Great Rising. Joe, first of all, hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, it's great to be here, and congratulations on everything you're doing.
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you for putting me out of my anguish when you called me up the other day, and I was like, oh, and then everybody was extremely worried that I was going to be pulled away into something rather weird and strange and nebulous, because I think people are looking to be saved, if you like, from the woes that are coming down the pipe, and sometimes messages can appear to be too good. So thank you very much for that. Now, with you as well is Adrian. Hello, Adrian.
Good morning, Richard.
And nice to meet you too.
Very nice to see you too, Richard.
So, the Great Rising, as you have called it, who wants to start and tell us what this is about and why we should be excited?
Okay,
Go for it, John.
There we
yeah.
go, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's an important place to start. So maybe by saying what the Great Rising is not. It's not just another organization that's been set up. It's not activist. It hasn't got a huge agenda. It hasn't got a head office, a CEO, a board of directors, or a building.
Right.
The Great Rising is something that is already here. It's already happening, and it's happening across the planet in a whole variety of countries where decent, honest people are just saying enough is enough. And they're marching, and they're just marching for the right to live their lives in the way they want, in freedom and in safety. These are ordinary people. These are housewives. These are the doctors, they're nurses, they're lawyers, they're accountants. They're all, through all walks of life. They even include the services, the policemen, the fire people. It's just people who are starting to recognize what's been happening over the last few years, and they're saying something's not right. They're looking into it, and they're talking to friends and relations and colleagues, and they're worried. And they're right to be worried, because some of the things that are being imposed on us are not great. They're not good, but we must not be fearful.
No.
We actually stand up to oppression and what is wrong, and we must look to create a better future for all our children and our grandchildren, using the rights and freedoms we were born with. So a lot of people who follow you, Richard, on your show are already at this point in time members of this Great Rising, because they're recognizing what's happening, and that's why they watch your show, because they want to learn more about it.
So sort of members by default, not having signed up to anything. Because I was going to say,
Yeah.
certainly the people that I've been interviewing, a lot of these grassroots organisations where people have just got together. I was going to say, there's a lot of people doing it. I'm aware of that, and
Yes.
I've seen links to places, as you said before, across the world where people are just organising themselves in small little isolated or joined up with other little groups. So this is kind of an amalgamation of all of those, I guess, recognising all of them, as it were.
Exactly, yes. It incorporates all these fantastic organizations. A lot of them have sprung up since the beginning of the pandemic.
Mm,
And all the Great Rising is trying to do is create a kind of banner or logo, which will is being done at the moment. And if you're someone who really wants to create a better future where we have all our preserve all our human rights and our sovereignty, then by displaying the Great Rising logo, it's simply saying, this is the future I want for me and
right.
my offspring.
A bit like the tractor logo in the food industry that just
Yeah,
sort of recognizes it's of a certain quality type thing, but it's
yeah, it's just
recognizing that
saying,
you're part of a
yeah,
general movement.
it's just to say I'm concerned with what's going on, and I want to fight for the freedom of myself and my family,
Mm.
and for a better future. And that logo is being put together to actually show that you're part of that philosophy of life.
So, Adrian, what is it? What will people? I mean, other than just being part of this generic rising or awareness that things are going wrong and people are trying to sort of do their own thing, whether that be small bits of farming here or watching out for 5G towers or keeping cash alive, that sort of thing. How does it all come together? Is there any form of strategy to stop these things that the WEF and the tyrannical governments seem to be pushing down at us?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, the strategy is engagement at a local level with the people who are involved in local government in delivering this, the Great Reset and the Agenda 2030, um, and all the sort of the fake greenery of the 17 sustainable development goals and your Build Back Better and your Great Reset. All of this is delivered at a local level by local councillors and local council
Right.
officers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people are starting to do increasingly is finding ways of engaging constructively with their elected representatives at the local level. Um, just going along to surgeries, emailing councillors, um, making them aware of issues, sounding them out, in fact, as to the extent to which they're aware of these issues. And actually, you find that a lot of councillors are very, very aware of certain things that are going on locally, but they don't seem to have the big picture. They don't see how it all fits together.
So, do you think that these councillors and the people implementing all of this stuff have a sense of the nefariousness of it? The sort of, whilst you can argue that a 15-minute city sounds great, that you've got everything in your locality that you could possibly need, but if you were to say to the councillors, well, that's kind of what a town is already, why do we need cameras capturing our biometrics or tracking our cars here, there, and everywhere? Maybe they don't realise that there's more to it than just simply a nicey, cycly, walkly 15-minute city where everyone's supposedly all being jolly.
Well, exactly. And unless you've already discerned through sort of much broader reading to see how these strands fit together in a global strategy, you won't see the nefariousness of it. I mean, for
Right.
example, if you read through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, there's very little there that any reasonable person could disagree with. I mean, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, good education. It goes on and on and on. And
Mm.
it's it's a question of reading between the lines and seeing how these things are actually being delivered in practice. So, for example, the think things about livable neighborhoods and what have you. Why is it that when you're trying to build a livable neighborhood, the first thing you do is start erecting barriers to free movement,
Yes,
that sort of thing?
exactly. Yes.
And why do you set these completely unrealistic and unachievable and quite dangerous goals over net zero, zero carbon, that sort of thing? and the consequences. This is the thing, it's understanding the consequences that implementing all these things to their fullest extent will have. And whilst a lot of local councillors are very well aware of the ideas, they don't see how it all fits together. They don't see the trajectory where it's leading. So, and also, a lot of them don't tend to. Well, let's put it this way. One of the areas in which we could engage in dialogue is just sounding them out as to their capacity for critical thinking. Are they able to see through the lies that are being spread? Are they able to discern truth from falsehood? Really dig down into the claims that are being made.
So it's kind of the mindset, sort of getting beyond their mindset that they've been trained. I mean, it seems that in this day and age, you go through the education system and universities, and all these sort of ideas are being planted in your mind that there is only this way to go. And then we've been told about the nonsense of global warming and net zero, and so much of that is in your, I'm thinking from the councillor's point of view and the people who are bringing this stuff forward. It's almost as if you have a diametrically opposed, more holistic view that perhaps we all share, that they don't kind of recognise that. Things like sustainable and these mealy-mouthed words that sound as if it's all good, but diversity being another one, and actually they don't really mean what they're sort of very weak.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Richard. Most town councillors, and I know quite a few myself, are really honest, decent people, and become town councillors for all the right motives, because they really want to do something positive for their communities. And they have been for some years. But I think what's happened since certainly the pandemic started is they are being given a lot of new initiatives to follow up, that's come top down. And they're ordinary people, and they don't have the bandwidth sometimes to research all the motives behind what they're being asked to do, that comes down from, above government level down to them. And what I found certainly is when they start to understand, to put the parts of the jigsaw together, there's that aha moment where they're thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. That doesn't sound good. Because these people have got children in the local schools, they've got grandchildren, they're caring people, and they just need to understand what the big picture is that they're now part of.
I made a video a couple of months ago now, in which I called it "Don't Build the Prison," because I was aware that there were people, the ordinary workers, who were putting in the 5G and all of the infrastructure and the ULEZ cameras and things, and it seemed to me they didn't know that that's what they were building. They're building the prison walls that is actually going to affect them. And I got a bit of flack from a few people saying, well, people have got to have jobs. This is the work. What do you suppose they do? But I just thought, well, they probably have no concept of what it is, as you say, the bigger picture of what it is. So I absolutely get that with the councillor. So the concept of the Great Rising is to engage with these people, to get them to recognise more than what they see in front of them, presumably then.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. It's not activist, it's not violent, it's not protesting as such. It's just becoming consciously aware of all the things that are happening and understanding that they're not all in isolation. They're interrelated and they have a bigger agenda. And you're not going to see this stuff on mainstream TV. You're not going to get it through our politicians. You have to do a bit of homework to realize what that big picture is. And then just to say, no, this is not the future I want. I want to be part of a movement or a philosophy of life that gives us a better future.
Right. So would you say this is a philosophy of life then? We're moving people into realizing there's more than just being penalized for driving your car so many times down the road or parking, or it's a philosophy of bringing back what a more holistic lifestyle. I mean, I've been talking about food because a lot of my guests have been worried about health consequences of highly processed foods,
Yeah.
and those sort of things. And I'm actually on Tuesday. No, it's Tuesday today. As we record this tomorrow, I'm seeing a group of people who I've interviewed, but I'm going to watch their operation where they buy in organic food from various different farmers across the land and then sort them out into various boxes, and the community come in and collect their boxes and all of this of organic food. So they're doing it right down at grass levels from somebody's garage. And that's just brilliant to see that. So they're saying no thanks to the supermarket. It's nice of you to provide all that horrible food, but we're going to get food straight from the farms and as close to where we live as possible. So
it's happening all over the country.
Yeah.
The people who are doing that are already part of the Great Rising.
Right.
Taking back responsibility for the food they eat and getting it from sustainable local places. So, yeah, that's a great example.
Because we know that there seems to be a lot of worry now, what with the RNA vaccine, that some of that technology is going to go towards animals, which may then end up in the food chain. And there's a lot of debate about whether that's a good thing or not. And many people would would rather have the choice not to have that if they're buying from a supermarket. And so hence going to more organic food. And we've seen the Precision Act, the Precision Breeding Act, which is a bit peculiar from King Charles, who was very much into organic foods. There's a lot of confusion, and I'm sure people are don't want to find their choices are taken away from them.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's all about all of those things, really, and
Right.
it's just decent people coming together and sharing those ideas about the organic foods from local farmers. It's about recognizing their sovereign human rights. It's parents starting to be a bit wary of what's happening in education for young primary children, and the rules about what books they read and what they're being exposed to. There is mothers against this kind of movements where there's mothers against education policies, which is negatively affecting the development of their children. There's so many different fronts that there's a need for unison between us. Instead of what the kind of globalist agenda is of divisiveness,
Yes.
dividing us, whether by culture, creed, color, religion. What we need is unity.
So we don't seem to have a lot of time, because we know that there are targets from the WEF's thing, and the government seem to be fully on board. They haven't asked us whether we want any of this, and it seems to be going across the world, this top-down government. So, I mean, so far it sounds, and I don't mean to be critical, it just sounds a bit woolly to say there's a lot of people already doing it. Is there an incentive to sort of get the what would you call it, the stone rolling down the mountain, the snowball sort of rolling and collecting up people, and bringing a momentum to this? Is there a sense of that people can feel actually this is more than just a name and what we're already doing?
Yeah, Adrian, you've probably got some comments on that. What I'm seeing, which is really powerful and very, very encouraging, is I see every single day more and more people waking up to what's going on around them and starting to ask questions.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's the reason that shows like your own are getting so many people subscribing and following it, because they want to know what's going on here, and they're not finding the answers through the mainstream media. So that it's almost like a great awakening that you can actually see happening. And the Great Awakening, whatever you call it, the Great Rising, it doesn't matter. It's people, good people coming together, starting all these organizations, and all really all these organizations have the same goals. It's to create a better future. And the Great Rising, as well as the logo, the plan is to have a website, which is just not an organizational website, but a resource place, a place where people can go to get documents, to do research, to find information,
Right.
what's going on and how they can contribute. In the way that Adrian just described, for example, starting by talking to your town councillors, see what they really know.
So it's sort of being feeling that your group is not alone, that you're connected to an overall rising of the population who've all had enough.
Yeah,
And I suppose the logo, as we said before, like the tractor logo, is just giving you a sense that you're all part of something, but it isn't hierarchical.
Yeah, exactly. It's about branding and identity, and so that when people see the Great Rising mentioned in one aspect, in one context, they'll
Right.
recognise the same spirit, the same theme.
Yes.
They see it in other respects.
I suppose it must be very difficult from your point of view when you're trying to inspire all these groups to come under one branding, to not appear to be hierarchical or controlling or anything like that. And that, from what I gather, is not the process. It's not the aim.
Yeah, very much so.
yeah.
So it's not.
There's no leaders.
Yeah.
There's no leaders. What we can do is through the website and through the various other channels that we may develop, provide signposts to all the organizations who are performing these kinds of rebellions and actions, because a lot of them publish their own very useful resources. So we can signpost those resources, leaflets and memes and stickers and signposts to other websites. We may, for example, host things that will assist local groups in their engagement with local councillors. For example, there's been the idea of a questionnaire that will sound the local councillors out on a variety of topics, and possibly a petition that can be used in a local area, just to gather support, to encourage councillors to engage with a questionnaire like this.
Right.
Because through a mechanism like that, you could identify who are the councillors who are willing to engage at all, who are the ones who are awake and aware, who are the ones who are sort of showing some capacity for critical thought and an interest in sort of learning more about what's going on. So those are the kinds of things that I think can be offered by the Great Rising as a movement. We're not going to tell people what they should be campaigning on. We might make some gentle suggestions about what they might best avoid campaigning on, because there are some issues that are, well, they can be hard to prove, they can be irrelevant. It can be the case that people just won't be able to believe that there's any truth in these things, and they're kind of rabbit holes and time wasters. So one thing we might attempt to advise on is, well, don't go down those rabbit holes. Let's focus on the stuff that's really, really important.
Well, presumably there are priorities anyway. I mean, things like we know that the banks are sort of caving in, and there's central bank digital currencies and things like that. And a lot of people may or may not be aware of the negative side of that and how important to keep cash at this moment, or whether there would be another type of monetary system that would work, that people would engage with. So would you say the Great Rising, it's really just the people? Like, so I'm in England, and so it'd be like the people of England have just got together in the way that the rising of 1381, the Peasants' Revolt, the people of England, the hard-trodden down people were saying, hang on, we've had enough of this. And whilst there were many leaders in little areas, but it was just a sort of general rising that nobody was really in charge. You have names like Wat Tyler and John Ball and Jack Straw, I think, was another one.
Yeah.
And they've come down history, and I've got a book by Juliet Barker, actually, and she says, actually, they were so minor players in it, but they're the names that have come down. And, of course, that was quite a violent rising, and this is not that, but it is the people of England asserting themselves. And presumably, if you've got the logo and things like that, when one council over here sees it, and they say, "Oh, blimey, we've had these people." The logo itself as a symbol of freedom and pushback will make the councillors all over the place start to wake up, and even the government go, "Oh my goodness, what is this?" Clearly, the people have got their sovereignty back, and they don't want us to be tyrannical. Which, and that's that thing about there's more of us than there are of them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Richard. It's a peaceful movement. It's a philosophy,
Right?
and there's no activist, violent arm to it at all. We have to do that. We have to do this reasonably. It's more about an education, because there are a lot of people, certainly that I meet, who, when they understand what's going on and a bit more about the bigger picture, their first response is, "Why didn't I know about this? Why didn't someone tell me?" And so the more people we can explain what's going on and how it's all interlinked, the more interest they'll have in it. And it's also about complying. That I already said at the beginning that there are millions and millions of people all over the world who are already, by definition, part of a great rising. And that means, in a sense, that they have decided not to comply with tyranny.
Yes.
But a lot of people are complying with tyranny without realizing it. They're complicit because they're following the mainstream narrative, doing as they're told, trying to be good citizens, not realizing the consequences, but in a sense becoming complicit. An example of that, a very, very simple example, is we all know that cash is under threat.
Yes.
We know that digital currencies is the way that the globalist agenda want us to move forward. So in a sense, when you use a cash transaction, you are saying, I'm not complicit in this. I'm not complying, because I know what digital currencies mean going forward. It means cash will disappear. And once you've controlled the currency top down, you can stop people's bank accounts if you don't like what they're saying.
Yes.
So every day, if you're choosing not to use cash, in a way, you're becoming complicit with what the bigger agenda is. And it's little things like that that I think people want to hear, they want to understand.
And the sneaky part of that is that it's just so very convenient. They've made paying it by, tapping a phone or by a card or whatever very convenient. And that's okay at the moment. But when you switch to this programmable money that can be linked to a social credit score, depending on whether you've been a naughty boy or not, and
Yes.
the money is being, as you buy something at the point of purchase, that is potentially being monitored or flagged up at that precise moment, as opposed to when you buy something with a Visa card or a debit card or whatever, it's at the end of the day. It's too late for them to stop you buying your petrol or diesel, whereas this new money can actually do that and just say, no, sorry, you can't buy it, which of course is an interference in your life that is beyond the pale. So
Exactly. And it's similar in a 15-minute city, that you will get some people who go to an extreme. They become very activist and very upset about it. But you also get thousands of people maybe in that city who just go along with it and be complicit because they don't understand the dark side of it. They just think, oh, well, this is interesting. This is fine. It's that education element that is key.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that I've spoken to outside of doing this, and I've mentioned things like 15-minute cities, and they think, well, it's a great idea, isn't it? And less cars on the road and walking about, less pollution, and we've got to save the planet. And they've bought into the whole thing. And it does sound, this is the problem that one has. And having that conversation with people who who will look at you and roll their eyes when you start to go into the nefarious nature of it is they have no concept that although it all sounds very nice, there's more to this than meets the eye, and that's the difficult part. But if you're part of, I mean, this is what I was saying with these ladies that do the organic food. You get people who come in on one item, oh, we want to eat better, and because they're a community of people, they're also then talking about the other things, and they're educating themselves, going, oh, is that what 15 minutes? Oh yeah, no, I point you to a video and blah blah blah. So then suddenly they become more aware of, oh yeah, money's important, we don't want to lose our freedom, we don't really need to have cameras tracking us everywhere we go, and all of that. So these communities are beginning to sort of learn not just their one issue, but the greater issues.
That's exactly right. That's what's happening. That's what's
Right.
going on, and that's good. I think what people are not realizing is that we are currently, this sounds extreme, but it's not. We're at war, and
Yes.
it's a war of bullets and missiles. It's a war with an unseen, unaccountable, invisible enemy that are imposing severe restrictions, step by gentle step, against decent people. And as soon as people realize that's happening, the British spirit comes out. Enough's enough. We don't want this. We want a better future.
Yeah.
And united we stand in a very peaceful, cooperative way.
Now, when you rang me originally out of the blue on my house phone number, which some people got a bit worried because they thought it was ex-directory, but I shouldn't really say that it is an ex-directory, but it is available somewhere. I don't always actually answer that phone because it's tucked away, because it's a landline. Although I have seen a movement saying that actually we should go back to landlines because you're less likely to be traceable if you're using a landline. So that's a good thing. But you mentioned to me there was an event taking place and that I would get the golden ticket. You know, I'd be one of many that's being invited. I know you said to me before we recorded that at the moment that's not been secured. You don't quite know where it is, and the date is yet to be sorted. I get all of that. So who's coming to that, and what's the purpose of that meeting?
Yeah, it sounds very nefarious, but it's not at all. No, there are so many people like yourself, Richard, people who
Right.
are not afraid to speak out and share information. That they're all in the public domain, and they're not secret, they're not hidden. And what the Great Rising movement or philosophy wants to do is simply to bring these people together, people like yourself, to discuss all the things that we're now discussing in a very, very open way. And we also want to launch an idea, and it's just an idea of the logo that we want to use for the Great Rising to get people's approval, and to tell them there will be a website of resources, and just to foster communication between like-minded individuals. It's as simple as that.
So
It will
these would be like organisers of all these different grassroots people who are already doing this
a
stuff.
lot of people already doing things, great
Right.
things,
Yeah.
ordinary people who stepped forward and said, we want a better future. So yes, we just want to bring people together, informally, and share our thoughts and ideas, and learn from others, and take it forward from there. Adrian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, one thing on my mind to add is that it's become clear to me and many of my colleagues here in Worthing, that there is a very great sense in which the people who are involved in the, let's call it the truth and freedom movement, are reaching a growing awareness of this is a great battle, but that it's a spiritual battle. And I'm not using the word spiritual in any kind of non-secular way. People come from this from various different perspectives, but there seems to be a universal recognition that there's something very deep going on in the collective human psyche, and that it's all about the evolution of the human race, and that this is a challenge that we have to overcome between us, in order to sort of move on to the next phase of our development as a species. That we have to learn to balance the extreme individualism of the West that leads directly to the capitalism and the destructive nature of that, versus the imposed collectivism of communism. Now, even the synthesis of those things, which is generally termed communitarianism, there's a good side and a bad side to it. And this process that we're involved in is about developing a dialectical synthesis of those things, so that we can bring the very, very best of all those systems together into a new way of being. Because there's no doubt about it that the old system is completely corrupt, and it's on its knees. And it seems to me that there are actually two different new world orders trying to emerge here, and they actually have some rather interesting things in common, which I haven't got time to go into now. But the message really is that, yes, this is a spiritual challenge. It's an individual challenge. It's about coming together, collectively learning how to work together, because, and it's a numbers game as well, that there are so many more of ordinary human beings at grassroots level. There's probably about 1 million of us for every one of the high level people involved in this global cabal that's bringing these nefarious things about. So we have numbers on our side. We have growing public awareness on our side, and people are finding a great deal of courage in just purely through acting. Action conquers fear.
It's interesting you say that, because I feel that when I've gone on this journey and interviewed people, and people have sent me, my viewers are very keen to send me links to all sorts of videos that reveal the dark side of what's going on behind the scenes, and you're trying to evaluate whether all of that's true or not true, or it's slightly exaggerated or what have you. And I've gone through this sort of pit of fear when you face what seems to be the almost satanic approach that some of these people have. And then you come out, because I do believe in humanity, and I do believe that the ordinary person who is truthful, kind, considerate, all those good values that will conquer everything. And now I feel incredibly empowered, even though we have a government in which both parties, the main parties, seem to be hell-bent, either side, no opposition on the other side, to be against us, to the point that I've started to, and I've expressed this in my videos, that the whole government system is wrong and has come to the end of its life. And I don't know whether this is what will happen in the Great Rising, as part of my own personal feeling, is that all that sort of way of having what's now become a very tyrannical dictating system, in which people are not really being represented, and their views are not being mirrored back down to us, having come up through to the House of Commons and through the Parliament, that's got to go. I mean, I feel that whole way of doing things, that there is going to be a much more holistic, natural, and democratic way of doing things than where we've got to at the moment.
You're absolutely right, Richard. Absolutely. I mean, the government is fragmenting. It's falling apart. It's past its sell-by date. What people don't realise is that the government officials, the politicians, are essentially just puppets of a higher authority. And I've researched this myself, and I've written articles on it, and actually got unequivocal proof that this is the case. And even some politicians openly admit it, that there are bodies above them controlling policy.
Right.
On what I want to get across, particularly to your listeners, is an uplifting message.
Hmm.
This isn't all about doom and gloom. Um, the globalist agenda, I'm convinced, is doomed to failure. If you look at the history of tyrannies that have tried to take over um, countries or regions or mankind in total, they've always been brought down
Yes.
by decent people who just want to live a normal life coming together, and they get to a point where they just say no. And this is on the horizon at the moment. And I know there are lots of people, some of them watching your program, who are living in a bit of a state of anxiety or even fear.
Yes, absolutely.
Those are people that certainly, Adrian and I'm sure you'll agree, we want to reassure them and say, don't don't fret, don't worry, don't be anxious. There are millions of great people doing great things, and we are going to stop this madness. So, and so you can lead your life in the way you planned it rather than the way than you're being dictated to. We have to stand united, we have to stand positive, we have to speak up against tyranny, and we have to create a better society. And it's happening all over the world. I'm
That
very moved and excited by it. We're living through an incredible moment in history.
I'd certainly agree with you there. It is an incredible, and you're right, because I have, as I was trying to elucidate there, that I feel very positive about what's happening, even though I'm aware of the bad stuff, because I actually think that we are going to get beyond this. We may have a bit of a rough time where we're sort of confronting it and saying no, we don't want it, and then beyond that, well, sky's the limit. It's up to us, isn't it? So where do we go from here now? You've told me a little bit about the Great Rising. There's an event happening. My audience will be hopefully excited and thinking, okay, or they might be a bit critical or cynical and going, all right, so what's going to happen next? So what's the next step? How can as you say, I'm invited along, so I can report back on that. But what should we expect?
Well, I think everyone, including all your listeners, will be passionate about some aspect of what's going on. We all have different interests.
Mm.
Um, for me, one of the biggest threats that concern me is the pandemic treaty. Other people, it will be 5G, the climate agenda, it might be 15-minute cities, it might be digital currencies and IDs. But whatever it is that emotionally is causing you anxiety or worry, get involved, talk to people, get involved in your local community with like-minded thinkers, and just do what you can in these wonderful organizations that are being set up everywhere, and be aware of this great rising that is happening. You're not alone. You're part of a movement that is global, and Adrian and I and other people who are involved in the Great Rising will be helping you. We'll be helping by disseminating information and resources that you can use. Do your homework, and I guess my main message would be: don't listen to what the politicians are telling you or what's on the BBC News.
Yeah.
If you know the truth, look alternative.
So presumably, once your website is done, that will be a big focal point, so that somebody who's thinking now, going, that sounds interesting, I'd like to get involved, I'm interested in pushing back against, say, digital IDs or whatever it is, they could then go to the website and find who's doing that, join those groups, depending on the area that they're in. So there's this sort of central information bureau that isn't controlling anything, it's just centralized information and giving people any help and all of that.
Yeah, and I think the people that are coming to the meeting that's coming up in June
Yes.
will bring much more information into the fold that can be shared. Is that fair
So
to say, Adrian? I think that's what we're.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there'll be a lot of ideas come out of the conference. We will probably have some breakout groups to focus on the various topics of interest, and figure out short and medium and long-term goals, and we'll have to figure out there and then the extent to which we'll provide material and support for those goals, and or the extent to which we already have the material and it just needs to be signposted, that sort of thing.
So it's kind of, for the moment then, watch this space, and I can obviously report back. So the next step is really this meeting of all these different influencers and organisers and people who are doing stuff. It's not open to the public, I assume. It's invitation only, because you said I would get an invite. Is that right?
At this stage, it is invitation only. Yeah.
Yeah, just to get the ball rolling.
You know, the people who are attending are people who are already running their own networks and organisations. Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's a network of networks, if you like.
Right.
And also, it's not just UK. This is international. We'll be liaising with colleagues doing the same thing in all over the world.
Brilliant. Well, it sounds very, very promising, and I think it's what people want to grab onto, something to know that it's not just them. They're not isolated. They're not on their own, and they're not subject to what is coming down the pipeline and all of that, and that there is a sense that ordinary people are going to take back the control rather than the governments and these tyrannical think tanks. Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'll draw it to a close now, if that's okay. But the Great Rising, ladies and gentlemen, it's happening. It's already happening. It's all over the place, and this is going to bring it all together, and it's something to be very excited about. Joe and Adrian, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about it. I'm very excited myself. It will be interesting to see how this all pans out. The sun is shining today, so that's great for a good sign for the future. I'm taking. So brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, thank you very much for having us on the show.
It's been my pleasure. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. What did you make of that? The Great Rising. It's happening. It's already here, and you can be part of it. And I'll report back as soon as I know a bit more. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me and watching the show. And I will be back with more interviews and more monologues and things in the future. But until then, from Joe and Adrian and I, goodbye.